The private room was in a complete uproar. Those people were all celebrating. They were celebrating that the son of Lucas, the home wrecker, had successfully taken over and inherited the Shin group, and I, the legitimate young master who had always outshined him, was out of my mind. Because I publicly revealed my sexual orientation, I was kicked out of the house. They laughed at me for being a fool. I kept silent. Indeed, I was a fool. Before, I was so brave and determined that I wanted my lover to hold hands with me openly in the sun. I even prepared a ring to propose to him. However, my lover was sitting beside Lucas at this moment. When others laughed at me, he remained silent. Someone said, "Henry really deserves a lot of credit for pulling William down so quickly." Yes, indeed, it's been tough on Henry. As soon as he heard that Lucas was being bullied, he immediately flew back from abroad to help. The beauty trap really worked. They laughed at me recklessly and raised their glasses again. Henry also raised his glass. Under the flickering lights, the glasses clinked. It seemed that there was also a sound in my heart. It was very faint, and something broke. I kicked open the door of the private room. The laughter inside suddenly stopped. I fixed my eyes on Henry, casually picked up a bottle of wine on the table, and raised it towards him, saying, "Henry, explain yourself." Henry didn't say a word. I don't know if it was the lighting or something else, but his face was deathly pale, and he sat there as if frozen. A bespectacled man beside him stepped forward bravely and said, "What's there to explain? Do you really think Henry likes you? Let me tell you, you've been deceived. William, what are you pretending for? You're just a naive love-struck fool. You like men. It's so disgusting. Now that you can't compete with Lucas, just be a good-for-nothing and get out of here." I didn't listen to those people's chattering at all. I just stared at Henry, until Henry hoarsely said, "I thought you wouldn't ask knowingly." It was an indirect admission that what those people had just said was all true. I took a deep breath and weighed the wine bottle in my hand. Not bad. The wine bottle was quite thick. I swung my hand and smashed the wine bottle on Henry's head. Soon, half of his handsome face was stained with blood. There was a commotion around. Some people tried to rush forward to restrain me. I blocked them with my backhand and kicked those who pounced on me to the ground one by one. I was knocked down by something, but quickly got up again and grabbed everything usable on the table. Wine glasses, wine bottles, fruit platters. I smashed them all on their faces. I don't know how long it took, but those people didn't dare to get close anymore. I heard someone say, "William has gone crazy." More people were screaming in pain and cursing, saying that I was a pervert, a lickspittle who liked to be sodomized. I wiped the blood that blurred my eyes, hung my broken left arm, and turned to leave. As I was leaving, I seemed to hear Henry's voice. Of course, it might just be an illusion. After I went out, I felt dizzy and fell on the road. When I opened my eyes again, I saw a smiling face. He said his name was Daniel, and he was traveling around the world with his husband. They just happened to pick me up by the roadside. When he mentioned his husband, I instinctively glanced at his short hair, Adam's apple, and below. Of course, I didn't see anything. As my line of sight moved downward, it was blocked by a strong body. This was my first encounter with Michael. For a moment, I thought I saw a bear. Michael gruffly said, "Kid, you fight so recklessly. Are you short of money?" I definitely wasn't short of money before, but after being kicked out by the Shin family, I spent all my previous savings on that engagement ring. Now I'm really strapped for cash. Seeing me nod, Michael looked at Daniel and said aggrievedly, "Honey, oh no, we've picked up a penniless guy. This huge bear who was just being gruff. How can he make such a coquettish voice now?" His embrace gave me a headache. Daniel is a very gentle person. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. During these 3 days, I told him the story of my 30 years. Actually, it's quite simple. Everything went smoothly until I was 29. Then I met a man. I thought it was true love, but in the end, I was treated like a fool. I didn't even cry, but Daniel cried when he heard my story. Michael, this doting husband, immediately stood up and said, "Don't cry, honey, I'll kill him," saying this was easier for him than me eating peanuts. Daniel stopped him and said, "How many times have I told you? Now you have to." Michael was extremely obedient and smoothly continued, "Be an honest person and do things steadfastly." Daniel stroked his head. Daniel invited me to go back to France with them, mainly because Michael warmly invited me and said he wanted to invite me to work in his company. because I gave him some pointers when he was grinding his teeth and working on a proposal. He said he couldn't let go of a talent like me. I agreed. I had no choice but to agree. Now the whole of City A is laughing at me. I can't afford to lose this face. It's quite good to go to France to relax. My father has long since been enjoying family happiness with that illegitimate child Lucas. There's nothing in City A that I'm attached to anymore. I originally wanted to leave directly with Michael and the others, but Daniel disagreed. Don't be in a hurry. I still have to take the silly dog to an exhibition. You should also tidy yourself up properly before leaving. I thought about it and said sincerely, I don't have anything to pack, except for that room. All my other things have been taken back by the Shin family. Now I'm just a penniless wretch. Daniel reached out and patted me. Tidy up and leave in 3 days. All right. It's quite a ritual. After much thought, I'm too lazy to stay in the hospital anymore. Since the existence of that illegitimate child Lucas was exposed and my mother was so angry that she got sick. She had been lying in the nursing home. Finally, she died alone in the hospital. What I hate the most is the smell of disinfectant. I went back. There's only this one apartment left. I have to get a good appraisal of its value. I specifically bought this house back then to make it convenient for me to live with Henry. However, the location is quite good. It should sell for a good price if I put it up for resale. While I was estimating the price in my mind, as soon as I opened the door, I locked eyes with Henry on the sofa. The other person's eyes were full of exhaustion. When he looked at me, he forced a smile, as if all the harm and deception were just my illusion. William, you're back. Are you hungry? I'll cook for you. To be honest, it was quite disgusting. I directly avoided him and walked straight into the kitchen. Seeing me go in, Henry obviously breathed a sigh of relief and followed closely behind, sticking to me like a big dog. Honey, where have you been these days? When the passion was at its peak, he liked to call me honey. I've always known my sexual orientation, but it was the first time I fell for this man who was 5 years younger than me. I thought he called me like this as a little fun. Now that I think about it, for a liar like him, saying sweet words is easier than me smoking. I turned around and punched him. It hit him right on the nose without holding back. He didn't dodge and took it head on. He was still smiling with blood on his nose. Are you feeling better? He knew I'd be angry, but he thought I'd calm down. I thought about it. Maybe it was because of my wholehearted love for him in the past year that made him forget what kind of person he was. It's my fault. I tilted my head and punched him again, this time with even greater force, knocking him down to the ground directly. The back of his head hit the kitchen door with a loud noise. When he slid to the floor, he was still smiling. Honey, how about I take you out for dinner? Didn't you say you wanted to go to the Sky High restaurant last time? I've made a reservation. I did say that before. 2 days ago, I was kicked out of the Shin family. I almost had my legs broken by that old man with his walking stick. After leaving with nothing, I used all my savings and shamelessly borrowed money to buy an engagement ring. Then I took the last of my money and wanted to book the Sky High restaurant. In my stupidly beautiful fantasy, I would propose to Henry there. I would tell him that although I left the Shin family, I had the ability to start over. As long as I could be with him, we would live a happy life together forever. I would tell him that I didn't care about others, money or power. I only cared about him. Now I only feel lucky. Fortunately, I didn't say it. Otherwise, it would have been even more stupid. What I care about most now is money. I have to quickly sell the house and the ring to get some cash back, and then go to France to expand my business. I walked forward and was grabbed by the hem of my pants. Henry grabbed the hem of my pants and looked at me aggrievedly. There were bloodstains on his handsome face, and the fresh bruises on his fair skin were extremely terrifying. I was in a daze for a moment. The first time I saw Henry was in a bar. He had broad shoulders and a narrow waist. The white t-shirt couldn't hide much under the light. The faint outline of his well-built muscles was very alluring. We are all adults. If you like someone, you should go for it. I picked up a glass and walked over. I originally wanted to pretend to accidentally spill the wine on his clothes and then get his contact information. As a result, he suddenly swayed, and all the wine in my hand spilled on his pants. Although it was noisy around, I felt as if everything had become quiet. The curve outlined by the wet area on Henry's thigh in front of me, to be honest, kind of put me off, but he hooked my finger. with just a gentle twirl of his little finger. My heart was in a mess. I pressed my wildly beating heart, looked back at him, and tried to use the most ordinary tone and put on the coldest expression. "What do you want?" He curved his lips. F***K. It wasn't until he pulled me into his arms that I realized this guy had just been flirting with me so boldly. No, he looks like a well-behaved young man. How could he be so experienced? When I followed him to the hotel room, I was still thinking about it. As a result, he had already unbuttoned my suit and shirt, opened his mouth and took my Adam's apple in, and bit it gently. The dim yellow room light fell on his face, casting a shadow, making it hard to tell his mood. A sudden blaze ignited in my throat, and I felt an intense thirst that spread throughout my body. At the very moment when the fire burned away my last bit of reason, I managed to regain a moment of clarity and said, "I don't want someone who's not clean." Henry leaned in closer, kneeling on one knee between my legs. His slender fingers rested on my belt buckle and he said, "Don't worry, alright? Well, if it's offered to me on a silver platter, I might as well take it." I hooked my legs around his lean waist and lay there lazily. Then I casually tossed the condom on the bedside table to him and said, "Put it on yourself." It was obvious when he was opening the package that his movements were quite inexperienced. Fortunately, although he lacked experience, he made up for it with good physical attributes. It was really quite comfortable. Except that, in the second half of the night, I was so exhausted that I shouted to stop several times, but this young man didn't respond. All in all, it was a rather wonderful night, so the next morning, I very generously left a check for 10,000. I'm not giving any more. We rich people aren't complete fools. In fact, only a year has passed since then. Henry is really quite crafty. Since that one night stand, he's been pestering me, acting coquettishly, and sticking to me like a big dog that I just can't get rid of. I was blind. I mistook a white-eyed wolf for a dog. Now, I'm quietly looking at his face. I have to admit that I still like it very much. I looked at him sincerely and said, "Henry, actually you can consider entering the entertainment industry. With such a handsome face, such good acting skills, and those eyes that look so affectionate at everything. I really don't know where Lucas found such a weapon." I admit defeat. Just as I was about to step over him, Henry suddenly sprang up and hugged me tightly. In a dizzying moment, I was pinned down on the kitchen floor. Fortunately, he cushioned my head with his palm, so it wasn't very painful. After all, I lay in the hospital for 3 days. I really don't want to be back in the hospital right after being discharged. I was forced to look up at him with my face tilted back. Along with a long silence, Henry's breathing grew heavier and more rapid. His eyes turned redder and redder. I said seriously, "If you want to fight, at least don't resort to sneak attacks. It's so low class." Henry gasped even more violently. I was even afraid that he would suddenly have an asthma attack and die right on top of me. It's okay if he dies, but don't drag me into it. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly started to undo the buttons of my clothes. "No, are you a brute?" I grabbed his wrist, wishing I could break his hand right away. "Henry, sleeping with a stiff as a board man is no fun at all. Don't torture yourself." When those people in the private rooms said this to mock me, Henry kept silent. What on earth is he up to now? Henry let out a low laugh, as if he suddenly let out a sigh of relief, with a relieved smile on his face. "I didn't say those things. They're just spouting nonsense. Don't take them to heart." Seeing that I didn't say a word, he held my hand with his other hand. "If you're still angry, I'll call them all out later. You can beat them one by one until you feel better." After saying that, he nuzzled my palm in a flattering way. I find it hard to describe my current mood. It's probably like that time when I went to an exhibition. I really liked a white porcelain vase, but later I found out it was broken. Watching helplessly as the things I once loved rot right in front of me. It's like a reminder to me, look, the things you love are nothing special. I don't want to talk. After hearing that whole deception outside the private room that night, I actually lost the desire to confide in Henry, but I can't stand this mad dog pinning me down all the time. I sighed and said, "It hurts. Don't press on me anymore." Henry's eyes lit up. He rubbed against my shoulder pitifully, his hair soft and fluffy, with a big smile on his face. "Wife, I'm so hungry." I pretended not to understand. "I'm hungry too." His rubbing motion paused for a moment. Henry smiled and helped me up, then wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Wait a little longer. I'll cook you a bowl of noodles." I nodded and then managed to get out of the kitchen smoothly. There are still 3 days before I leave. I have a lot of things to do and don't want to waste any more time on him. So after I found an excuse to leave the kitchen, I went back to my room, locked the door from the inside, and didn't go out until the takeaway guy told me he had left it at the door. As soon as I opened the door, I saw a bowl of steaming noodles on the table. Henry was sitting beside it, looking at my takeaway with a gloomy face. People who don't know might think he was going to poison my takeaway. Seeing me come out, he forced a very ugly smile. "Takeaways are unhygienic. I'll help you throw it away." What the hell is wrong with him? If he throws it away, what am I going to eat? Am I supposed to eat the noodles he cooked? I quickly rushed over to protect my spicy crayfish. "No thanks. The food you cook tastes terrible." Henry couldn't smile anymore. "But you used to like it so much." What a stupid thing to say. In the past, I'd be overjoyed if he was willing to cook for me. I wouldn't even care if it was rat poison. I'd probably eat it without a change of expression and even praise the taste. I didn't want to talk to him. I just wanted to quietly enjoy my crayfish. When I was in the Shin family, I always craved these heavy oil and salty foods. But there were so many rules in the Shin family that even a passing dog would get scolded. Things are different now. William, the so-called useless piece of the Shin family. No one will be watching me all the time anymore, and no one will beat me up on the pretext of bringing shame to the Shin family. It feels so good. Henry was sitting across from me, peeling shrimp for me. This is crazy. Spicy crayfish are only flavorful when you suck on the shells and then peel them off by yourself. This is a waste of my shrimp. In the end, I bought 2 caddies. Except for those wasted ones that Henry had peeled, the rest all happily went into my stomach. After a full meal and a belch, when I got up to leave, the doorbell rang. I used to happily call this place the home with Henry and didn't allow others to come in. Moreover, I have no friends, so there should be very few people who know this place. So my first reaction was to look at Henry warily. Henry gave me a gentle smile and said, "Don't be nervous. Those outspoken guys are here to apologize to you." I think Henry is out of his mind and can't understand human words. He still thinks that this kind of thing can be solved with just an apology. He still thinks that I'm just angry. As soon as the door opened, sure enough, there stood neatly 3 guys who had beaten me in the private room that day. I glanced at them all around. One had a bandage on his head, another had a plaster cast on his hand, and even one was still on crutches. Tut, useless guys. I was fighting 3 of them alone at that time. It seems that I'm still as good as ever. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. That dog Henry was like a dog smelling meat and immediately came over and said, "Honey, if you still aren't relieved, you can beat them up again." I took a look at the reactions of these 3 guys. Each of them was meek and submissive, completely different from the smug looks they had when they mocked me in the private room that day. I said seriously, "Can I beat them however I want?" Henry said kindly, "Of course." The remaining 3 changed their expressions in an instant and were trembling when looking at me. However, none of them said a word more. It seemed that they had been warned by Henry on their way here. I nodded and said, "Not bad. You're quite generous to send your 3 lackeys here to let me vent my anger." Henry remained expressionless and said, "As long as you like it." I spread my hands and said, "Where are the tools? Do you want me to beat them barehanded?" After seeing Henry push over a box of wine, those guys finally couldn't hold it anymore. One of them, who usually stayed with Henry almost all the time, was the first to speak up. "Goo, Henry, we're still injured." Before he could finish his words, Henry threw a wine bottle at him first, shattering all his remaining pleas for mercy. Watching him scream while holding his head, the other 2 were completely stunned. I found it funny looking at their stupid expressions. I guess when they came here, they thought they were just going to play a show of begging for mercy in front of me. They didn't expect that this mad dog Henry really intended to do something to them. I weighed the wine bottle in my hand. It was heavier than the one in the KTV that day. When I approached them, their legs went weak from fear, but they didn't dare to get closer. When I used to teach others a lesson, they didn't dare to dodge either. But at that time, they were afraid of me. Now they're just afraid of Henry behind me. I clearly have the ability myself, but I've become that fox borrowing the tiger's might. How boring. When the wine bottle hit the table and glass shards splashed, Lucas finally showed up. He frowned and looked at the chaotic scene. Then he walked up to Henry in a familiar and natural way and asked, "What are you doing?" Then he took the half bottle of wine from Henry's hand. His gentle actions even touched me. Lucas glanced at the three of them and then looked at me and said, "They've been friends for many years. Maybe they spoke out of turn and made you unhappy, but you shouldn't use such means." Without saying a word, I raised my hand and hit him with a wine bottle. With a thud, it was very comfortable and pleasant to hear. Lucas took 2 steps back and almost sat on the ground with his buttocks. Fortunately, he was supported by Henry. Lucas leaned in Henry's arms, looking very aggrieved and pitiful. Almost subconsciously, Henry frowned and stood between me and him. "This matter has nothing to do with him." I had already picked up a new wine bottle and gave him a whack in the same spot with a backhand swing. You know what? The two of them were covering their wounds and leaning against each other. They really looked like a tragic couple on the run. I was very calm. "Get out of my house." Henry didn't say a word and didn't move either. I pointed at his bleeding wound and looked at Henry. "Otherwise, the white moonlight you've been secretly in love with for so long will bleed to death right in front of you." It's hard to describe Henry's complex expression at this moment. There was even a hint of fear in his shock. Lucas told me this non-secret 3 days ago. After I was sent to the hospital by Daniel and woke up from a coma, I received a video from an unknown number. It was a video of those people drinking in a private room a long time ago. Henry looked very young and green at that time. His expressive eyes were quietly fixed on Lucas in the crowd. They were all very drunk. One of them joked, "No wonder they say our Henry is a pure love guy. For the sake of helping brother Lucas, he can even get close to an old man like William." The charm of the white moonlight is irresistible. Everyone cheered and shouted that Henry was a pure love warrior. And I, the one who was deceived in love, was just an insignificant old man. In the video, I recognized the clothes Henry was wearing at a glance. It was the 3rd month of our relationship. I specially had them custom made for him. To celebrate my successful bid for that major project, the Shin family held a victory banquet. Ironically, I got that project from Lucas, that good for nothing. What's even more ironic is that my boyfriend, who said he was proud of me, didn't even change his clothes. After leaving the victory banquet halfway, he rushed to the gathering to comfort Lucas. The reason he gave me was that there was an important experiment at school. They all knew that Henry had loved Lucas since childhood. He came back to China, concealed his identity, and dated me just to make me come out of the closet and make the Shin family give up on me. They all knew that back then, Lucas, that illegitimate child, was raised in City H. He and Henry were like childhood friends. Henry, that hellraiser, had only ever listened to Lucas since childhood. They all knew about Henry's heart-wrenching and unrequited love story. Only I didn't know. Now that I think about it, many of Henry's actions were actually traceable. I was just too stupid. Amid the deafening silence, Henry quickly snapped out of his complex emotions. He forced an ugly smile at me, covering up his panic and unease. "Who did you hear it from?" Seeing that I didn't answer, he lost his cool and lashed out at one of the people first. "Was it you who said it?" That person was so frightened that he took several steps back and waved his hands in a hurry. Lucas looked very pale, covering his wound and saying weakly, "Henry, I'm so dizzy." Even I felt pity for him with that faint voice. Henry struggled for a moment. He wavered between my expressionless face and the pitiful Lucas. Then he gritted his teeth and said, "Honey, wait for me to come back and explain it to you." Then he half-supported Lucas and rushed away. The 3 lackeys behind also rushed after them. But just before leaving, they cast a contemptuous look at me as if they were the winners. Absurd, as if I would be extremely pained and grief-stricken just because Henry didn't choose me in this either-or situation. I secretly texted Lucas to come over just so someone could take Henry away. Whoever wants the rabid dog that has bitten someone can have it. Anyway, I don't want it. I reset the combination lock and then spent a little time tidying up the messy living room. After all, I'm gonna sell it later, so I have to leave a good impression on the buyer. I also returned the remaining wine. The wine Henry bought was all good, so I made another sum of money. When doing these things, there was an almost desolate calm in my heart. I calculated that blow on Lucas. Firstly, it was to vent my anger. Secondly, it was to give Lucas a reason to hold Henry back. After all, It was his first love from his youth who got hurt. It's only natural for him to accompany all the time. Thanks to Lucas, I had 2 good days. I threw away what should be thrown away and sold what should be sold. In the end, I found that, after living here for 31 years, the things I could take away were very few. On the last day before leaving, Henry came back. To be precise, after he found that the combination lock had been changed, he went crazy at the door. I had no choice but to open the door and let him in. He was dusty and still smelled of hospital disinfectant. As soon as he entered the door, he pushed me down on the sofa. Through the bangs on his forehead, he said word by word, "You put this house up for sale?" Why? I didn't want to hide it from him, but I also don't know why he would react so strongly. He looked very painful, as if I was selling more than just a house. So I was very sincere. It's none of your business. Back then, when I was blinded by love, I wanted to add Henry's name when buying this house, but he refused. Fortunately, he refused. Otherwise, I'd sit up in the middle of the night and slap myself twice. With just 4 simple words, Henry suddenly took a deep breath. The hand pressing on my shoulder tightened inch by inch, and the veins on the back of his hand bulged, as if he was trying his best to endure something. He stared at me intently, and his eyes seemed to lick down from my eyes inch by inch. Hearing his breathing getting heavier and heavier, I didn't hesitate at all. I slowly reached up with my other hand. As long as he made a move, I would immediately strike at his carotid artery. I should be able to gain 5 minutes to escape. Anyway, I had all the necessary documents on me and could leave directly. Just as I was thinking about countermeasures in my mind, Henry suddenly grabbed the hand that was groping up with his reverse hand. Without waiting for me to react, he slowly pulled me up by holding my hand. His 5 fingers forcefully squeezed into the gaps between my fingers. He smiled affectionately and said, "I didn't come back these 2 days because I went to get the ring." Only then did I notice the plain ring on his ring finger. It wasn't very delicate because I made it with my own hands. I cursed under my breath. Lucas is really useless. He couldn't even keep a person. He also lied to me and sent me messages every day saying that Henry was taking care of him in the hospital. It made me really let my guard down. Henry held my hand and quickly put another plain ring on my hand. Then he held up my hand, looking at the 2 plain rings shining under the light. His smile was full of sweetness. "William, I was wrong about what happened before. After giving the Shin family back to Lucas, let's live our own lives in peace." Okay. I didn't say a word. Henry continued talking on his own. "I'm rich. It's just that my business is not here. When I graduate, I'll take you back to the old house. Those people are just mean-mouthed. If you don't like them, I won't associate with them anymore in the future. Please don't be angry with me, okay? I won't lie to you again in the future." He made the matter of deception sound so trivial. It seemed that as long as he promised to live a good life with me in the future, I would surely be overjoyed, forget all the unpleasant things, and willingly hand over the Shin group that I had managed for so long. Although he asked okay. In fact, he never thought that I would refuse. I looked at Henry, who was immersed in the description of a wonderful future life, and said indifferently, "No, it's not good. I'm not willing to." "Henry, William, am not a trash shelter. Your goal has been achieved. It's my incompetence that I was deceived, and I admit it, so it's reasonable for Shin Group to belong to Lucas. Of course, if you didn't use such despicable means instead of business competition, I think that useless fellow couldn't hold on to Shin Group for long. However, to ask me to live in harmony with a liar, sorry, I'm not as despicable as you guys." Henry's fake smile froze on his face, and suddenly all his expressions disappeared. Just before I realized something was wrong and wanted to run, he grabbed my arm. Like a python devouring its prey, he pressed me into his arms and tightened his arms little by little. His chest vibrated. The coldness was like a dagger in the cold night, cutting through the false harmony. "So, you bought a ticket to France. Do you want to fly away and leave me behind?" Asking this question means that Henry has basically found out everything. He's been so busy these 2 days, flying abroad to get the ring and investigating me. I actually placed high hopes on Lucas, thinking that as his first love, he could keep Henry occupied and prevent him from bothering me for the remaining 3 days. Sure enough, Lucas is useless in every aspect. Henry held me tightly and said, "Why don't you say a word? Didn't you say you love me?" Didn't you say you could give up everything from the Shin family for me? Didn't you say you'd always be with me? Didn't you say you'd love me forever? When we were in love, I did say a lot of sweet words. I meant every word at that time. Still sounds sincere now, truly nauseating. Although I don't know why Henry suddenly acts like he's head over heels in love with me and would be heartbroken without me. I have a flight tomorrow afternoon. Now that I've lost my power and influence, I don't want any trouble, so I try my best to restrain myself from slapping him across the face. But you lied to me. Henry froze and didn't say another word. I continued, shouldn't I be angry? Henry loosened his hold a bit and looked at me quietly. I kept a straight face under his scrutinizing and burning gaze. Henry held me in his arms. The tight line of his lips relaxed, and a flurry of kisses rained down on my cheeks, eyebrows, and the corners of my lips. I endured the nausea and didn't push him away, just pretending I was being licked by a stray dog. After giving him enough sweeteners, Henry still wasn't satisfied and wanted to undo my buttons. I pushed him away and said, no. Henry laughed softly and hugged me contentedly, whispering, I knew Brother William couldn't bear to part with me. I'll go to France with you tomorrow. I'll buy you whatever you want to make up for my mistake. Okay. I didn't say a word. Anyway, Henry would make up the answer he wanted on his own, although it was really disgusting to sleep in his arms, thinking that there would definitely be a tough battle to fight tomorrow. I forced myself to fall asleep. In a daze, I felt his burning breath and trembling kisses. Carefully and vaguely, he kissed my lips. It was hard to tell if it was out of apology or desire. Brother William, I didn't know I would like you so much at that time. You'll definitely forgive me, right? After all, you love me so much. You must forgive me, or I won't be able to bear it. Forgive? Henry really doesn't know my temper. Henry really happily packed his luggage and was going to accompany me to France, under the pretext that I could relax and he could make amends. Perhaps my acting was too good. Until Daniel and Michael showed up at the airport, Henry still didn't realize what was going on. He was still explaining to me, Lucas saved my life. I misunderstood this kind of feeling. I know you don't get along with Lucas. From now on, we won't associate with them anymore. Okay. When being held down by the bodyguards under Michael's command, Henry still tried to stand in front of me to protect me. William, you go first. He didn't finish the rest of the sentence because I had already kicked him in the back, stopping his action of taking out his phone. The phone hit the ground. I don't know who kicked it, and it flew far away. When Henry was pressed to the ground, his eyes were wide open with anger. He stared at me fixedly, struggling to reach out his hand to grab the corner of my pants. He looked very pitiful and painful. William, wife, I stood beside Daniel. Michael stood between us menacingly, looking down at Henry. TSK, is this the scumbag you were talking about? The moment I nodded, Henry almost flew into a rage and punched at Michael. Who do you think you are? Michael's bodyguard pressed him back. Henry was so scared that his face turned pale. The bodyguard skillfully punched him in the abdomen. Henry let out a retch, and all the remaining swear words were gone. Sweating profusely and being pinned to the ground, he glared at Michael with hatred. As long as you don't hurt William, everything is negotiable. I can give you whatever you want. Michael sneered and pointed at me. At this point, you're still deceiving yourself. From beginning to end, the one who has hurt William is only you. Henry lowered his head and didn't look at me. His voice was extremely hoarse, like the rubbing of sand. Wife, you won't leave me, right? I said expressionlessly. Get out of here. Henry, after I heard all your lies to me at the door of the private room that day, I no longer loved you. All that was left was hatred. Guess why you could grow up with Lucas? Because I'm a person who always gets even and has a small mind. I drove the mistress and her son to a dead end. That useless guy had no choice but to leave here because of me. Michael gave me a thumbs up. Sure enough, you're the heir that the Shin family has cultivated for so many years. Except for having bad taste in choosing boyfriends, you're actually quite good in other aspects. Michael looked at Henry as if he were looking at trash. He put his arm around Daniel and said, Honey, let's go. With William around, I'll definitely have more time to accompany you from now on. Thank you. Your way of complimenting is really distasteful. I lifted my foot and stepped aside from Henry, getting ready to leave. Suddenly, Henry lashed out. His wrist, which had been held down, broke free from the security guard's restraint in a strange position. and then he unhesitatingly pounced on me. I was knocked to the ground by him. My forehead was resting in his palm, and then he pressed himself on top of me, like a dog guarding its food. He endured the punches and kicks from others and clung on tightly. His open coat completely shielded me. I couldn't see what was going on outside, only heard the sound of fists hitting flesh and Henry's groans. Then came Michael's speechless mockery. His hand is broken, and he still has the strength. After a moment of silence, he probably comforted Daniel a few words. Then his voice turned harsh. Don't waste time on such a person. It's not impossible to take down the Gu family completely. Forget it, just beat him to death. It's on me. But soon, it got noisy around me. When I was pulled up, the two groups of people had already formed a strange standoff. My heart sank. Henry's bodyguards had arrived. Henry looked at Michael with a cold face and said, "Anyone who wants to take William away deserves to die." But his bodyguards obviously recognized Michael. They looked hesitant and timidly stepped forward to say something to Henry. Henry's face darkened, and he slapped the man across the face and snatched the gun from his hand. The dark muzzle of the gun was steadily pointed at Michael. I didn't expect this crazy man to go this far. I instinctively stepped in front of Michael. Anyway, he and Daniel are innocent. Henry's hand was shaking violently. His expression was fierce, and his voice was full of eagerness. With a strong sense of fragmentation, "Honey, come here." I shook my head and said, "Henry, I've said everything I need to say. I don't know why you think I'm just angry. You don't understand me, and it seems I've never understood you either. In the end, we're not in a relationship where we can have a harmonious conversation." Sighing, I was very honest. To be honest, if I still had power and you weren't the heir of the Gu family, it should be me forcing you to eat bullets now, instead of trying to persuade you. This mad dog nicely here. Michael put his arm around Daniel and stood behind me. He even had the leisure to clap his hands and said, "Well said. Here, this is for you." He casually handed me a gun, as if he were handing me a bag of melon seeds or a grilled sausage, and said, "I originally wanted to do it myself, but I thought it would be more ceremonial if you did it." Sometimes I think Michael is just as crazy as Henry. Michael smiled and said, "If you don't shoot now, this fool will think he still has a chance to get your forgiveness for the rest of his life. Do you want to be pestered by him forever?" I aimed at Henry. Henry also had a gun in his hand, but he not only put it away but also took a step forward. He smiled awkwardly. "Come back with me, wife. I really know I was wrong and I'll change." "I won't." He didn't finish the rest of his words, because I pulled the trigger. It was really funny. Before he fell to the ground, his beautiful eyes were full of tears. He stared at me firmly as if he couldn't believe it, and his lips moved but he couldn't utter a single word. All the bodyguards swarmed up at once. I quickly soothed their emotions. "Don't worry. I know what I'm doing and he won't die. But it's hard to say if you don't take him to the hospital in time." They carried Henry away, in the opposite direction from me. Sitting on the plane and looking at the clouds outside the window, Daniel got me a cup of warm water. "Drinking it will make you feel better." After a while, he handed me a tissue. I slowly unfolded it and pressed it against my face until the water soaked the paper and made it wet and soft. When I opened my eyes again, my vision was clear. I tried to explain. "I'm not crying for him. I'm crying for my self-assumed love. I'm crying for myself, who became all alone in my 30s. Daniel nodded. "I know, but you should also cry for your new life. Paris, the city of romance, is very inclusive and interesting. I know an interesting netizen. He'll come here in a few days. I'll introduce you two to each other." Seeing that I didn't say a word, he smiled. "Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to play matchmaker. I just want to tell you in advance that love is not the whole of life and not necessarily the first choice in feelings." The sunlight pierced through the clouds and was blindingly bright. I nodded and decided to start a new life from then on. What happened later? Owen had half a piece of spare rib in his mouth and asked gossipingly in a muffled voice. I rolled my eyes. "Don't you know what happened later?" Owen thought for a long time. "That's not right. Insidia, it said that you were reluctant to let go, chased Henry to the airport and then got beaten up." Well, you'll have to ask Michael. He didn't want to deal with the mess of the Gu family, so he told a lie. Unexpectedly, Henry didn't do anything about it, and the rumor just spread like that. Owen looked very shocked. "Gossip can be so harmful. I really thought you were just like me, a lovesick fool at that time. I didn't expect you to be much tougher than me. There's no need to compare. Daniel is right. We're all serious people in relationships. We give wholeheartedly and love wholeheartedly. Serious people shouldn't be hurt. After clearing the plates, Owen pulled the curtain and said, "TSK, that mad dog is still downstairs. Are you going for a walk today?" I shrugged. "Yes, I am." Owen kept complaining. "When on earth will he disappear?" I stroked my chin. "Soon." After Henry forcefully returned to Cydia, he was like a mad dog that bites anyone it sees. He even didn't spare Lucas and snatched a lot of resources from under the Shin group. He almost offended all the forces in Cydia. Then he unilaterally transferred the company to me. Owen always thought I was Henry's secretary, and that I endured humiliation to let Henry stay around me just for a monthly salary of 50,000. Actually, it's not the case. No matter how much I loathe Henry, I have to admit that he's an excellent business hunter. It's a dream come true for me to have someone like him manage the company for me and send me money regularly. But it's not okay recently because I've met a painter. He's 5 years younger than me and has a very cute smile. It seems that I'm just naturally attracted to this type. He chased me for half a month, and I couldn't resist. I've gone on 2 dates with him, and it felt great. I cooked this meal for Owen today to celebrate my second spring. Owen implied, "When are you going to make it public? Aren't you afraid he'll go crazy again?" I shrugged. "It doesn't matter. If he dares to play tricks, I have plenty of ways to deal with him. After all, I've said many years ago that I'm a vengeful person with a small heart. It was just like getting bitten by a dog in the middle of life. It hurt, but it's already in the past. There are boundless beautiful things in this world, and I still have a wonderful life to squander and enjoy.